Let us move on now to the next keynote speaker, Dr. Shakuntala Thilsted, who is Research Program Leader for Value Chains and Nutrition at WorldFish. Shakuntala has a PhD from the University of Copenhagen and is one of few global experts to study and advocate the nutritional value of small fish. Thank you again for joining us, Shakuntala. We look forward to your words. Take the floor.
Thank you so much, Martin, for inviting me to be part of this event. And I'm happy to be here. I'm calling in from Penang, as you know. So greetings, everyone, from hot, sunny Penang. And it's the afternoon here. My presentation today is on the nutritional value of small and low-cost fish. And I'm going to be working with Sharon Suri, who is going to help me go through the slides. As I say, next, please. I asked myself as I was preparing this presentation, why do I have to talk on this topic again and again? Everyone by now should get the message and know what the importance is. However, we do have to carry on this message to ensure that the nutritional benefits of small and low-cost fish reach to all, also to the people who need them most. What can we do, the different stakeholders, to ensure this, besides just talking at yet one other webinar? So let's go. So I hope that with my presentation, I will set the stage for all the speakers who follow me today and tomorrow, and together with our partners all across the globe at all different levels, we can be a strong force for positive change so that small and low-cost fish can nourish people. Next slide, please, Sharon. Today, I will use this presentation to show the case of the nutritional value of small and low-cost fish. Why small fish must be considered as a superfood. Then I will give some examples of actions that we, the different partners, can take together and individually.
Go ahead, Derek.
Good day, everyone. This is Derek Johnson from Winnipeg in Canada. And I was just wondering if we could get a little bit more information from Dr. Aburto, if she's still available, about these different meal supplementation programs using small fish. She had mentioned a number of countries. And I'm just wondering if she can say anything about the sort of divergent experience in these different countries of introducing fish into these supplementation programs in terms of things like consumer acceptance, for example.
Martin?
Go ahead,
okay.
Dr. Aburto, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Derek. Thank you very much for the question. So there are two. I think there are two different key points to highlight in this. One is building off the context that you're working in. So introducing fish products or innovative products from fish and aquatic foods that are somewhat familiar. So you say innovative products, but you're not introducing fish to a population that never eats fish at all, or you don't introduce some other aquatic product that is considered taboo in a particular cultural environment. So one part is gathering information and understanding about what current practices are and building from that, as opposed to trying to launch something that's completely foreign to a particular group, especially in working in these school programs. Ensuring that you're not trying to introduce to children something that maybe they've never seen, heard, smelt before. But having said that, another interesting part of the work is understanding how to overcome small challenges, such as the integration of food products into a school meal program that may indeed change the color, if you're doing integrating a food product into a rice plate, for example, that may change the color or consistency of a rice plate. And so how do you integrate something new that you're building off something known, but at the same time you're knowledgeable enough to understand what it takes to overcome some of those challenges. So every context brings a different challenge in that way, but understanding what the baseline context is an important step. Having said that, I'll just reiterate some of the work FAO is doing to try to understand not only nutrient values, but in terms of like these food-based dietary guideline developments, what are some of those socio-cultural contexts in which we're working as well that provide information that can help make these projects and innovations more successful. Thanks.
So thank you, Dr. Alberto. I understand that Shakuntala is back online again and that we can continue with her presentation.
Thank you, Martin. I don't know where that came from. I've been doing so many webinars, and this is the first time I've had this problem.
That's okay. Welcome back.
Okay, thank you so
please
much.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was talking about what I'm going to use this presentation to tell about the nutritional value of small and low-cost fish. And I started by saying that I would give some of the scientific evidence for the nutritional value of small fish and why small fish must be considered as a superfood. Then I'll give some actions that have taken place and piloted for ensuring small fish can reach and nourish those, especially those most in need, and considering those and ensuring that no one is left behind. And then lastly, I'd leave with some key messages. Sharon, next slide, please. Let me first put this in perspective of the global food and nutrition security. Every year, the SOFI report is published, giving an update of the global food and nutrition security. As we can see, and we heard from our former speaker, the data tell a dire narrative, and now with COVID-19, an even more alarming narrative. We know that 2 billion people do not have regular access to nutritious and safe foods. We know that 340 million children, about 50% of the global children under 5 years of age, suffer from micronutrient deficiency. And we also know that the groups who are the groups that are difficult to reach and who are most in need for nutritious foods, such as stateless people and refugees, these numbers are rising. And these people are hosted in some of the poorest countries of the world, making their situation even more alarming. And now with COVID-19, it was estimated that alone in 2020, up to 130 million people would be added to the total number of undernourished people in the world. So we should be using all our efforts in order to make sure that we leave no one behind. Those who are at the bottom are being lifted, and that we should do that not only by supplying adequate quantity of food, but ensuring that that food is also nutritious and safe. Next slide, please, Sharon. So small and low-cost fish have some unique characteristics which make them so crucial for nourishing people. We do know that in many places of the world, these small fish, they are bountiful, they are diverse, well-liked, they are seasonal, culturally accepted, and what I won't take into consideration in this presentation, but I'm sure that there are others that will bring it in, is the low environmental cost. So taking all these unique characteristics into consideration, safe and affordable small fish made accessible for all, especially those with the greatest needs, can improve global food and nutrition security. Next slide, please. We have worked with analyzing fish species, mainly from Asia, and the nutritional content of composition of these small fish species. When we began by focusing on the micronutrients, because we knew at that time that all the focus was on protein, but that the micronutrients were perhaps more important than the protein for many reasons. We do know that there are multiple minerals and vitamins in small fish. And when I started, the vitamin I zoned in was vitamin A, because we had at that time many who were suffering from night blindness and many who became blind with a deficiency in vitamin A. Now, many countries have programs for alleviating vitamin A deficiency. And presently, my focus is on vitamin B12. And why do I focus on vitamin B12? Because vitamin B12 is found only in animal source foods and aquatic foods, also plant source aquatic foods. And importantly, vitamin B12 is crucial for brain development and cognition. So can you imagine what it means for national and global development if we can ensure that the children of this world can perform well at school, can when they grow up have an optimal work performance, and these benefits will be intergenerational. So I really do think we should work hand in hand with policymakers to ensure that they all understand why it is important we should include small fish in policy considerations. Next slide, please. I've talked about the micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals, but also small fish, well, some small fish, not all, but we know that some small fish are rich sources of essential fatty acids. And here I've given examples from 3 parts of Africa: Lake Malawi, Lake Kitengiri, and Lake Victoria. And we do know that the small fish in these areas, if they are consumed, and also if they are consumed as dried fish, that they give large amounts of essential fatty acids. And we have seen, for example, that in the breast milk of women in Lake Victoria who eat dagaa, that the essential fatty acid concentration in the breast milk is high and exceeds the global average. And we know that if you look at the different consumption patterns, that the fatty acid composition of breast milk is influenced by the fish species that's consumed. Next slide, please. So with these few examples of the nutrient composition of small fish and the composition with respect to vitamins and minerals and essential fatty acids, not forgetting, of course, protein, but that's I want to focus on the micronutrients and essential fatty acids, that the small fish is a nutrient powerhouse. It is sold in small portions, and therefore they are affordable to the poor. You don't have to buy a big, large fish. There's minimal cleaning loss and plate waste, and when cooked with vegetables and spices, further increases new micronutrient content by bringing with it other micronutrient-rich foods. And as we heard before, these small fish are usually consumed whole, and therefore they contain high concentrations of micronutrients, and these micronutrients coming from animal source foods are highly available. When these small fish in many areas of the world are dried, then, and the moisture content is removed, then this is an even greater powerhouse because you have greater concentrations of nutrients, a long shelf life, it's easy to store, you can overcome seasonality and thereby increase the duration and the frequency of consumption. And I'll show examples of how these small fish can be used when dried to make convenient, easy to use, and ready to eat products. Next slide, please. Before I do that, I want to give some selected evidence from Africa. And all these examples I've given here is based specifically on small fish. I did not take into consideration the wealth of evidence that is based on meta-analyses that talks about fish in general or seafoods in general. I've just given here examples of that have come out of work done specifically with small fish. So we know, for example, in rural Kenya, if small fish is added to the diets of children 3 to 5 times per week, for example, you can optimize nutrient intake, nutrients such as zinc, iron, calcium, and vitamin B12. And in Eastern Kenya, work done by researchers from the Wageningen University and their partners in Kenya have shown that if you add small fish to the diets of children, you would increase the nutrient adequacy, meaning reach more, give more to their nutrient needs. In a community-based intervention with small fish and young children in rural Malawi, we saw a greater muscle mass and a larger mid-upper arm circumference. So this tells you something about the anthropometric measurements of these children and how well they thrive. And again, from rural Malawi, we have seen that when you add small fish powder to complementary food, it results in greater weight gain. And in Nigeria, small fish powder has been used to effectively treat rickets in children. Work done in Zambia by looking at fish consumption patterns and doing surveys and collecting data of how much foods young children eat. We have seen strong associations between high fish intake, the small fish Capenta and Chisensi, and low stunting in children. Next slide, please. When we talk about small fish, we normally talk about small fish as it appears on the plate. So it's fish together with other foods on the plate, the staple and vegetables, for example. So we know that that the small fish is together in combination with other nutritious foods. And why is this important? It's not so that fish not only gives its value with the inherent value that it comes with, its own nutritional composition, but it adds with it other nutrition foods, thereby bringing greater nutrient intakes in those who eat these small fish on the plate together with other foods. And what is very important is that we know that fish enhances the micronutrient availability from the plant source foods on the plate. I would very much like if we can do more research on this. There are very, very few scientific evidence of this. And sometimes I wonder if this complementary value of small fish in enhancing the micronutrient bioavailability from the other foods on the plate is not of greater value than the inherent nutrients that come from fish. Next slide, please. What we have done and started in Bangladesh together with, and now doing with, working within partners in many different countries, is preparing convenient, easy to prepare, ready to use fish products from small fish. We know that throughout the world, even in low and middle income countries, that many who take care of meals and diets for themselves and for their family, they give as one of the critical factor whereby they cannot, for example, feed nutritious foods to their children is the convenience and the time it takes to access and to prepare and to serve a meal to the child. So if you would have convenient foods, then you will reach a good way into making sure that these foods are consumed. So in Bangladesh, we've developed a fish chutney with fish and spices and oil that can be used by women, especially pregnant and lactating women. We've developed a whole complementary food, and we've also developed a fish powder. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. In Malawi and Zambia, where there is a where pound food is very well known and dried fish is found in markets, we've worked with many communities in order to get fish powder prepared at home and used in the diets of young children and women. And in Timor-Leste, from small fish from marine sources, we have been preparing convenient products by having them in oil and some spices, and then they can be stored and for a long time and used as a ready-to-use food. Next slide, please. So I talk about small fish on the plate and as part of a diet, but we know that the ways of eating is changing and consumer preferences are changing. We know that quite a lot of food is consumed as snacks. So perhaps we have to go one step further and look at small fish and making sure that small fish is consumed outside of meals. So for example, we could look at snacks, and this is the snack that I'm showing here. These are dried anchovies together with peanuts, which is a snack in Malaysia that can be used for children, for example, school children, or for the elderly as a snack. And it would be good, I think, if we could develop a drink that can be used at all times from fish powder. How we do this, I really do not know as yet. And who do we start working with to develop these products? Well, surely when I talk about it being convenient, much of it cannot be done at home. So do we have to look at large enterprises with whom we partner, or do we look at small enterprises with whom we partner? And tomorrow you would hear from one of my colleagues from Cambodia who is a small enterprise working with dried fish for making fish products for treating malnourished children. Next slide, please. I've talked about the nutritional value of fish in terms of the nutrients that they contain and also the nutrients they bring with it as a food on the plate. However, we do know that the quality of fish, importantly, is not just the nutrient quality, but also food safety. And there are many food safety concerns with respect to small fish products. These pictures that I've shown here are pictures of fish products that I've taken from the market in Myanmar. And we have looked at some of these products and we have found parasites in some of the products that we've collected from the market. We also know that others are looking at pesticide use when you dried fish, and that I just saw a report from from Norway, where they are looking at heavy metals in fish and looking at the values and the safe levels that should be set for heavy metals in fish. Next slide, please. So if we want to maximize nutritional benefits of fish, well, of course, I talked about, first of all, we have to consume it, but and they have to be available for us to be able to consume it. And we know that from global estimates, the estimate given is that 1/3 of the fish is lost or wasted. And if we would bring that fish into the diets of people, then we would get much greater benefits, much greater nutritional benefits. So therefore, we should look at ways of reducing the loss. I really do not know what the loss is in many places because we have very, very poor estimates for losses in different countries. But I would imagine in some places it's a lot, in some places maybe not. But also when the quality of the fish, for example, during drying gets poor, then that fish is maybe used for animal feed and not used for human consumption. So there's a lot to gain by ensuring that we put approaches in place that reduce loss in loss. The other thing that I want to talk about is reducing the fish used for animal feed. Next slide, please. So I've taken this from Yori Shulton, and who you'd hear about tomorrow. He works with partners in India. And I've taken the first photo from some of his work in Tamil Nadu in India, where here these small fish that are being offloaded will be used for shrimp feed. And the other photo I'm showing is again the sardinella fish being produced for fish meal in Mauritania. Now, what if we have placed a policy if we have a policy in place that says some of the fish that's being removed for fish meal, fish oil, that they should be converted into human food, and that food should get back to some of the populations, the poor and vulnerable populations, the coastal populations from which this fish was taken. I would like to see some sort of actions taken by policy makers that talk about this, using fish in this manner for human consumption and for those who need it most. There's a paper by Christina Hicks and partners that show in many places of the world, if you take the marine catch, but this is not only small fish, this is all marine catch, that you can meet the micronutrient requirements of people living along the coast of the countries in which these fish have been taken. Next slide, please. So and if you would do this, if you would put such an action in place that some of this small fish that's being used for animal feed is diverted back into human consumption, then what can you use this for? And you can use it for nourishing the poor and vulnerable and ensuring that no one is left behind. And especially now with the COVID crisis, where we know that many poor and vulnerable cannot meet their nutrient needs. So if we would put in place and use programs like food-based safety net programs, school feeding, mother and child health care, and target, for example, refugees and displaced people, we can have quite an impact on nourishing the poor and the vulnerable with small fish. The photo to the right I'm showing here, these are trials we are doing in in Odisha in India, where for underprivileged children in schools, we have included small fish in their diets. Next slide, please. Martin talked about the small fish being low cost. And yes, there are many evidence. There's some evidence of this, but when I am out in the field and walk and talking with the poor, and in the villages, in rural communities, many tell me that the price of the small fish is increasing over time. And we know that the pricing is based on quantity. What if we suggest another pricing based on the quality of fish, and thereby governments and other policy makers and development partners putting another value on fish? Then perhaps we can have another way of looking at fish and another way of valuing the nutritional benefits of fish, and thereby having fish used in programs that benefit the poor and vulnerable. Next slide, please. We've heard from our first speaker about how national food-based dietary guidelines can be used in order to promote small fish. And therefore, I do think one of the recommendations I want to come in with is that when we work at country level, that we work with national partners, with national government partners, to ensure that small fish is included in the food-based dietary guidelines. I have seen, for example, in Denmark, how this is used and how this channel is used, for example, to ensure that meals in schools, meals in kindergarten, even meals in prisons are highly nutritious, and that they contain certain numbers of servings of fish per week. These are some of the these are some guidelines that I've taken from Benin and Cambodia, and you can see that you can very nicely illustrate what kinds of foods that you should recommend in order that you can nourish your populations. Next slide, please. So I'd like to leave you with some key messages based on what I've presented here today. And the first is that in whatever actions we take with small fish for nourishing people, we should apply a nutrition sensitive food systems approach. And we should do throughout it. We heard Martin talk about the supply, the value chains, and the consumption. So all across, and when we also consider the levers, the policy levers, we should have a nutrition sensitive approach. We should invest in analysis of the nutrient content and food safety of small fish and make sure that the data is open access. My colleague, Marion, will talk about this tomorrow. We should promote the consumption of tasty, nutritious, safe and affordable, convenient small fish and products in public nutrition and health programs, focusing on the first 1,000 days of life. And I do think that the work that, for example, Derek Johnson and partners are doing in the program on the project on small fish matters should go that step further to come at the end of their work with recommendations for public nutrition and health programs. Next message is that we should influence, go back please, Sharon. We should influence the global and national policy makers for policy change and investments so that small fish are in development programs and can nourish people. And we should align to the Sustainable Development Goals up to 2030 and use all avenues to include small fish. For example, in the upcoming UN Food Systems Summit, before the summit, during the summit, and after the summit, working with partners at national, regional, and global level. Next slide, please. Let me end by saying that the WorldFish has recently launched its new strategy, Aquatic Foods for Healthy People and Planet. And within that, one of the impact areas is on nutrition and public health, which I lead. And within that impact area, there is much that we would like to do together with you and partners on small fish for nourishing people. So do get in contact with me, do join us, and let us ensure that small fish finds a place within the food systems for nourishing people, and that others also look at how it nourishes the planet. Thank you so much.